The first time she saw a tornado, it was as if the ground opened up beneath her, swallowed her whole, and left no room to breathe, to move, to do anything other than stare. She had been aware of the possibility this would happen when she moved to the countryside, but seeing the funnel of wind rage over the fields in the distance still had her petrified. With all her might, she shook herself from her stupor and got to work making sure she did all she could do, should the tornado hit her new country home. She was just about to put the potted plants that adorned her front porch inside when a red truck pulled up into her driveway. She frowned at the surprise of unexpected visitors as a blonde woman exited the vehicle. Her brown leather cowboy boots hit the ground with a soft thud, and Isabelle watched the dust blow up into 2 small clouds. It'd been a while since they'd had any rain. "Howdy," the woman spoke. "Hi," Isabelle replied, a little standoffish at the stranger that pulled into her driveway amidst a perilous weather situation. "What brings you out here?" She looked beautiful and very familiar, but the timing was still a little too odd for Isabelle's liking. The woman closed the door of the truck with a thud and put her fingers through her belt loops as she approached just the few steps necessary not to be shouting anymore, catching on to Isabelle's vibe. "I own the ranch a few miles over, and since you're new to town, I figured I'd best check up on you with that thing approaching," she said, nodding to the tornado that whirled in the distance behind her. Isabelle's demeanor instantly softened. "Oh, well, that's awfully nice of you," she replied. She recognized the woman now from when she'd visited the farmer's market in the nearest settlement. She was hard to miss with broad shoulders, a lean frame, and beautiful golden curls. Isabelle for sure had spotted her in town before from across the stalls. She racked her brain for her name, but came up empty. The woman looked over her shoulder. "We don't have much time, so I'll make it quick. Is this your first tornado? Where are you planning to shelter? Do you have a basement? Do you have your emergency food prepared? A battery-powered radio?" Her neighbor rattled off her questions, and Isabelle felt a little offended. Though she was new to this part of the country, she wasn't new to being self-sufficient. "Yeah, I got most of that," she said, staring the woman down. "I just don't have a basement." Her neighbor nodded, seemingly satisfied that Isabelle was well prepared for emergency situations. "I do have a basement. We gotta head back soon, but if you can grab your stuff and lock up in 5, I think you should come to my shelter." Isabelle eyed this strange woman. Did she drive all the way over here just to tell Isabelle that she thought she couldn't handle herself? Well, she thought wrong. "Again, that's awfully nice of you, but I think I'll be just fine on my own." "Listen, this storm ain't gonna be a light one," they said, "and I feel better having you safe than leaving you here. This farm used to belong to old Jeff, and he ain't done no work keeping this place at peace. It ain't got to do with you not being able to fend for yourself." The woman clearly understood Isabelle's reservations. "It's clear that you know how to take care," she concluded as she gave Isabelle an obvious once-over. Isabelle felt something familiar knot in her stomach, and a blush crept up her cheeks at the woman's gaze. She quickly weighed her options and realized that sitting safely in the basement of her neighbor beat weathering her first big tornado on her own. She knew she hadn't done all the fixing up in the house she wanted to yet, and her neighbor could very well be right about that Jeff. "Let me just grab my things. I'll be right out." She gave in. The woman gave her a reassuring smile. "Good. I'll just turn the car around." Isabelle quickly dropped a bunch of things in a bag and sped out the door. Like her neighbor had promised, the car was turned around and the engine running. Without a second thought, Isabelle hopped in and they sped off. Isabelle watched her home get smaller in the side mirror, and a sliver of fear slipped into her mind. She hoped it still would be standing upright when all of this was over. The woman seemed to sense her worries and patted her knee gently. "It'll be fine, dear," she said. "Just think of it as a fun sleepover and it'll be over before you know it." Isabelle let out a loud laugh at that. "A sleepover? What are we, in junior year?" she asked, though with a little malice behind it. She appreciated that the woman tried to make her feel better. Isabelle realized she should probably learn her name, as her useless brain still came up empty. "I usually knew the names of the classmates I was staying over at," she quipped, trying to take the edge off her previous comment. That got a laugh out of her companion. "Oh, excuse my manners. I was so caught up in the whole tornado thing," she said, flopping her hand around as a gesture. My name's Brooke. Remind me of yours again? We've seen each other around back in town, but I don't think we've been properly introduced. My name's Isabelle, she replied. Isabelle. Isa. Izzy, she tried out, wrapping her country twang around the vowels. Isabelle's thighs twitched. Izzy, what brought you to live life in such a small town? Brooke asked as she pulled into her driveway. Well, I've always been a small-town kid, Isabelle replied, a little shaken by the way the newfound nickname fluttered in her chest. It was just time for a new horizon. A new horizon? Brooke inquired as they stepped out of the car. I'm not about to lock myself into a room with a wanted serial killer, am I? She asked, eyeing Isabelle over the hood of the car. Isabelle laughed, loud and hearty. No, ma'am. No crimes of that kind on my record. Other crimes, then? Brooke's gaze pierced through Isabelle's soul. She knew the rumors about Brooke. Of course she did. The townspeople probably said the same about Isabelle. A woman living out here by herself. The rumor mill spun hard. It's not like either of them could dispute it either. They had been dancing around each other for so long now, sending each other glances from across different market stalls, but never talking, because the people already did. They hadn't needed to talk, though, for the pink handkerchief in Brooke's left pocket had told Isabelle plenty. Isabelle didn't dare speak the truth out loud, though. Instead, she smiled down at her shoes. I'm as good as a simple country girl can be, she replied. Brooke just eyed her before ushering Isabelle inside. Brooke's basement was clearly designed for a situation like this. The walls were thick and sturdy, and lined with shelves that held all kinds of canned goods. As Isabelle scanned the room, she quickly realized that the room was also clearly designed for one person, or a couple maybe. There was only one simple bed in the corner, and Isabelle audibly swallowed at the idea of sleeping in such close quarters with the bell that picked her up. She'd have no qualms, but she didn't want to give the town more reason to talk. Brooke didn't notice Isabelle's internal struggle, as she was fiddling with the buttons of an old red radio until a voice seeped through the static.
Seems to last all night. Stay sheltered. Earliest tomorrow evening.
Isabelle's heart skipped a beat at the report. They were stuck here now, together. Brooke turned around, clasping her hands together. All right, Izzy, what'd you like for dinner? She asked, dramatically gesturing towards the shelf behind her. We've got a selection of the finest fresh products. Nothing but the best for our clientele. Isabelle huffed out a laugh at Brooke's antics before deciding to play along. Well, she started, what's your chef's special? She inched closer to Brooke, staring her down to challenge her. If it's nothing but the best, then I'd love to see what you can do with these. She nodded to the shelves. Brooke threw her head back in laughter as she grabbed Isabelle by the shoulders. Don't you worry, Izzy, she said, squeezing a little before letting go and stepping toward the simple stove in the corner. I already made stew this afternoon. Hope the missus is fine with reheated? She smiled. Why, of course. Isabelle broke character, not wanting Brooke to think she'd actually be prissy. Isabelle wasn't that kind of girl. If you'd set the table, Brooke asked, gesturing to the small coffee table that stood in front of the brown leather couch. There's glasses and silverware in the cabinet in the corner. There's a bottle of wine somewhere in there, too, if you fancy. 15 minutes later, the two women were both sitting on the couch, bowls of stew in hand. The couch was small, and Isabelle's body was aflame at every single spot on her thighs, hips, and arms that brushed against Brooke. Brooke seemed to have no such qualms, and when they'd finished their dinner, she grabbed her glass with her left hand and let her right arm rest on the couch behind Isabelle. Isabelle's breath stuttered as she felt Brooke's inquisitive eyes on her. As good as a country girl can be, she heard Brooke muse. Her entire chest blossomed red underneath her floral sundress, and her ears tinged pink. She gulped down a good bit of her wine instead of looking at the woman beside her. Then she could feel Brooke's breath on her ear. I think I know exactly what your crime is, Izzy darling. Isabelle's head snapped to the side, her alarmed eyes boring into Brooke's. Their faces were impossibly close, and Isabelle noticed a soft line of barely visible freckles on the bridge of Brooke's nose. What is it, then? She said, her voice coming out as a squeak, no matter how unmoved she tried to be. Brooke just got up and gathered their bowls. shaking her head slightly. Isabelle watched her quietly as she put the dishes away before crouching down in front of the shelves. She rifled through a crate at her feet, and Isabelle had to admit she let her eyes wander over the beautiful frame of the woman in front of her. The silence had become comfortable, and only if Isabelle strained her ears could she hear the weather raging above their heads, the howling wind strangely comforting to her. "I personally believe that the only crime is getting caught, dear." Brooke broke the silence, just before a record softly started playing. Isabelle thought she recognized the piano part from some distant memory, but she couldn't quite be sure. Brooke filled both their glasses again. The woman filled the time with small talk, and Isabelle allowed herself to relax and let the wine make her feel warm and contented. It was the only cure to the nerves she felt every time Brooke touched her arm or her knee when she said something particularly funny. When a natural silence fell between them, it finally dawned on Isabelle. "Lavender country," she breathed, looking straight at Brooke. Brooke steadily held her gaze. Isabelle bit her lip, memories flashing back to her. Wandering hands, the sounds of the sea, and sunsets on the beach. Soft lips against her own. The feeling of coming home, even if she knew she could never return to her parents with the weight of this love pressing on her chest. Not being able to bear the influx of emotion, Isabelle feigned a yawn. "I think I should sleep," she declared. Her eyes flitted over to the bed in the corner. "I suppose I'll take the couch." "Are you crazy?" Brooke exclaimed. "I think I told you nothing but the best for my guests. If you don't feel comfortable laying together, I'll be taking this couch." Isabelle swallowed. She didn't feel like sleeping on the couch. Not really, anyway. And she couldn't deny herself the pleasure of sleeping next to her gorgeous savior, no matter how good she tried to be. Perhaps her mother had been right after all, and no amount of praying was going to absolve her from her sinful nature. "The bed is big enough for two," Isabelle noted, steadily looking at it instead of at Brooke. She felt Brooke's hand landing softly on her knee. When she turned her head, earnest eyes met hers. "I don't want you uncomfortable. You hear me?" Brooke said. Isabelle placed her hand softly on top of Brooke's. "I don't want you to be uncomfortable either." They could see in each other's eyes that they were talking about more than the facilities of their sleeping arrangements in the situation. They changed in silence, and Isabelle got underneath the sheets as fast as her body allowed her to. She regretted quickly stuffing her short summer nightgown into her bag instead of something more sensible. It dipped low, showing her cleavage. In the comfort of her own home, it made her feel beautiful. Here, she didn't know what to do with herself. She turned on her side, her back to Brooke's side of the mattress as her host turned off the light. Isabelle could hear the other woman's bare feet patter over towards the bed. She laid there, stiff, waiting for the other woman to get into bed and fall asleep so that she could relax as well. Then she felt it, a tentative hand on her waist, and when she didn't move, didn't push it away, the mattress dipped. She could feel Brooke slot herself against Isabelle's back, her arms snaking around Isabelle's waist, her soft breath on her neck. Isabelle felt her entire body involuntarily stiffen up until she heard Brooke murmur, "It's okay, Isabelle. I got you. It's all good." Her entire being relaxed, and she drifted off. The wind picked up, and Isabelle could tell a tornado would be coming soon. A soft smile graced her lips as she quickly took the laundry down from the line. She frowned at the holes in a pair of socks. She would have to darn those soon. She put them on top of the pile in her basket before scurrying inside. She put the basket down on the kitchen table and turned the heat off on the stove. Just then, she heard the familiar sound of a truck pulling up in the driveway as she poured the stew into a bowl. The front door opened, and moments later she leaned into the embrace that came from behind. She felt a hand cup hers over the bowl as soft lips landed just below her ear. "There's a tornado coming. I think you should come to my shelter," Brooke said against her neck, smiling. Isabelle nuzzled into it as she let out a soft laugh.